1 year after the hegemony fleet retreated from Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Council had expanded to include humanity as its newest member. Trade routes that had been controlled by ancient empires now welcomed human merchants. Young alien species that had lived in fear of their larger neighbors suddenly found hope in human military philosophy. Ambassador Danny Walsh stood in the council chamber once again, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of suspicious whispers and fearful glances, he heard respectful conversations and genuine interest. The small desk marked Terra had been replaced with a full-sized seat equal to any other council member. Council leader Mordak called the session to order with his usual formal tone, but even he seemed more relaxed than before. Today we address the final details of the Sol System Defense Treaty. This agreement will establish the framework for peaceful coexistence between humanity and all galactic powers. Representative Vashti of the Zephyrian Empire looked very different than she had a year ago. Her scales had lost their aggressive coloring, and her voice carried a tone of grudging respect rather than anger. The Zephyrian Empire accepts the terms as presented. We acknowledge human sovereignty over their claimed territories and agree to the mutual non-aggression clauses. Danny nodded politely. Humanity accepts these terms as well. We look forward to peaceful relations with the Zephyrian Empire. It had taken months of negotiation to reach this point. The Zephyrians had lost face when their invasion failed, but they were practical enough to recognize when they were outmatched. Rather than face more devastating defeats, they chose diplomacy. Fleet Admiral Zarthok appeared on the chamber's main screen, broadcasting from his flagship in hegemony space. The proud warrior looked older than before, but his voice carried newfound wisdom rather than bitterness. The hegemony of worlds formally recognizes humanity as a major galactic power. We propose a joint military cooperation agreement to share tactical knowledge and coordinate responses to future threats. This proposal had surprised everyone, including Danny. The hegemony had gone from wanting to destroy humanity to wanting to learn from them. Admiral Zarthok had spent months studying human military doctrine and reached a conclusion that shocked his own government. Humans were the most effective warriors the galaxy had ever produced. The offer is appreciated, Admiral, Danny replied carefully. Humanity is willing to share defensive technologies and tactical concepts with any species committed to peaceful coexistence. Representative Quindar of the insect-like species clicked. His mandibles in what Danny had learned was approval. The Hive Collective wishes to purchase human antimatter production technology. We offer exclusive trade agreements for rare minerals in exchange. Similar offers had been coming from dozens of species. Everyone wanted human weapons technology, but Earth had been very selective about what they shared. Defensive systems were available to peaceful species. Offensive applications remained strictly human. Dr. Elena Martinez had become the galaxy's most sought-after scientist. Her antimatter research had opened possibilities that alien civilizations had never considered. She now led a joint research station where human and alien scientists worked together to develop new technologies based on human principles of efficiency and innovation. The research partnership proposals look very promising, Danny told the Council. Humanity believes that scientific cooperation benefits everyone. We're willing to establish joint laboratories with any species interested in peaceful technological development. What the aliens didn't fully understand yet was how completely human thinking would change their civilizations. Species that had spent millennia building bigger and bigger weapons were learning to build smaller and more effective ones. Empires that had relied on massive fleets were discovering the advantages of small, fast ships carrying devastating payloads. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, commanded humanity's first diplomatic fleet. His ships were still smaller than most alien vessels, but every galactic power knew what human ships could do. When a human fleet arrived in a star system, it was treated with the same respect that had once been reserved for much larger forces. The most significant change had nothing to do with weapons or technology. Young alien species that had been conquered or intimidated by ancient empires were learning human military philosophy. David versus Goliath stories spread through underground networks. Resistance movements studied human tactics. The idea that small could defeat large was spreading faster than any government could control. On New Haven, Colonel Ryan Brooks had been promoted to planetary governor. The colony had become a symbol of successful resistance against overwhelming odds. Aliens from across the galaxy came to study the battle site where 20 human fighters had defeated 12 alien dreadnoughts. Military academies added the New Haven doctrine to their curriculum. The crystalline communion, the species that looked like walking trees, had embraced human philosophy most completely. Their representative stood to address the council with a voice like chiming bells. The communion wishes to announce the successful implementation of human tactical principles in our recent defense against Void Raider attacks. Small mobile units carrying efficient weapons proved far more effective than our traditional massive defense platforms. This news sent ripples through the chamber. The Void Raiders were one of the galaxy's most feared enemies, a nomadic species that attacked civilizations throughout known space. If the crystalline communion had successfully defended against them using human tactics, it proved that human military philosophy worked for other species too. Representative Zorhan of the Federation of Free Worlds leaned forward with interest. The Federation would like to hear more details about these defensive actions. We have been considering similar modifications to our own military doctrine. The discussion that followed would have been impossible a year earlier. Ancient species, with thousands of years of military tradition, were eagerly discussing how to abandon their old ways and adopt human techniques. The very concept of warfare was changing as the galaxy learned to think like humans. But the most important change was psychological. For millennia, galactic civilizations had believed that age meant wisdom, size meant strength, and tradition meant stability. Humans had shattered all three assumptions. A young species had proven wiser than ancient empires. Small weapons had proven stronger than massive ones. Innovation had proven more valuable than tradition. Council leader Mordak raised his forearms for attention. Before we conclude today's session, I have an announcement. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to establish the Human Military Advisory Commission. This new body will help member species adapt human tactical principles to their own defensive needs. Danny felt a surge of pride mixed with responsibility. Humanity had gone from being an unknown species on the edge of space to being the galaxy's military teachers. It was an incredible honor, but also a tremendous burden. Humanity accepts this responsibility, Danny said formally. We pledge to help any peaceful species defend themselves against aggression, regardless of the size or power of their enemies. Representative Vashati spoke up again. Ambassador Walsh, there is one question that many species still ask. How did humans develop such effective military thinking when your species is so young? Danny smiled. Representative Vashati, humans have been fighting since we first walked upright on our homeworld. We fought predators larger than ourselves. We fought each other with whatever weapons we could make. We learned that survival doesn't depend on being the biggest or strongest. It depends on being smarter, faster, and more determined than your enemies. But other species have similar histories, protested Quindar. Why are humans different? Because we never stopped learning, Danny explained. Every time we faced a bigger enemy, we found a new way to win. Every time someone said something was impossible, we proved them wrong. That's not special technology or ancient wisdom. That's just human nature. The session ended with formal ceremonies and diplomatic protocols, but the real business had been concluded. The galaxy had a new teacher, and that teacher had a very simple lesson. Small weapons in the right hands could accomplish anything. As Danny prepared to leave the station, he received a message from Earth. Admiral Lisa Barnes was requesting his return for a special briefing. Something new was developing on the frontier, and humanity needed its best diplomat ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had learned to respect human weapons, but Danny suspected they were about to discover that human weapons were just the beginning. The real power of humanity wasn't in their antimatter bombs or kinetic launchers. It was in their ability to look at any problem and find a solution that no one else had considered. As his ship departed the council station, Danny looked out at the stars and smiled. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans put their minds to something, there was no such thing as an impossible problem. There were only problems that hadn't been solved yet. The age of human expansion was just beginning, and the universe would never be the same. 6 months passed after the New Haven incident. The galaxy had not been quiet during that time. News of human antimatter weapons spread through every trade route and communication network. Some alien species wanted to buy the technology. Others wanted to steal it. A few wanted to destroy humanity before the weapons could spread further. The hegemony of worlds was the oldest empire in the galaxy. They had ruled over 1,000 star systems for more than 10,000 years. Their technology was ancient but reliable. Their fleets were massive and experienced. When the hegemony decided something needed to be done, it got done. Fleet Admiral Zarthok commanded the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 500 ships of every size and class filled the space around Hegemony Prime. Dreadnoughts that could level continents, carriers launching thousands of fighters, cruisers armed with weapons that could melt asteroids. This fleet represented the combined might of dozens of species working together. Admiral Zarthok himself was a legend among military commanders. His species, the Titan car, stood 3 meters tall and lived for centuries. He had fought in wars across the galaxy for over 200 years. No enemy had ever defeated a fleet under his command. The human problem must be solved now, Zarthok announced to his assembled captains. If we allow this primitive species to continue developing their weapons, they could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. Captain Velos of the heavy cruiser Determination raised one of her 4 arms. Her species looked like large cats that walked upright. Admiral, our intelligence suggests that humans have only a few dozen ships equipped with these antimatter weapons. Surely our numbers are sufficient to overwhelm them. Zarthok's yellow eyes glowed with confidence. Captain, we are bringing 500 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Each of our vessels has fought in dozens of battles. Our crews have centuries of experience. Against this force, even human trickery cannot prevail. Another captain, this one from a species that resembled walking rocks, spoke up. What if the humans have improved their weapons since New Haven? Intelligence reports suggest they have been upgrading their entire fleet. Let them upgrade, Zarthok replied dismissively. They have had 6 months. We have had 10,000 years. Experience always defeats innovation in the end. The massive fleet began its journey toward Earth. It would take 2 weeks to travel the distance, giving the hegemony time to study every bit of intelligence about human defenses. What they found made them even more confident. Earth's orbital defenses looked pathetically weak compared to what a major galactic power would build. A few space stations, some scattered platforms, and maybe 100 ships total. The humans seemed to have put more effort into civilian infrastructure than military preparation. Colonel Nancy Green had taken over Earth's home defense after the success at New Haven. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When the hegemony fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, she was ready for them. Ma'am, they're broadcasting, reported Lieutenant Ben Parker from his communication station. Put it through, Nancy ordered. Fleet Admiral Zarthok's image filled the main screen. He looked even more impressive than the Zephyrian commanders. His armor was decorated with medals from 100 campaigns. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never known defeat. Humans of Earth, the Admiral began. I am Fleet Admiral Zarthok of the Hegemony of Worlds. You have developed weapons that threaten the peace and stability of this galaxy. You will surrender all antimatter technology immediately and submit to hegemony oversight. Nancy stepped into view of the camera. Next to the massive alien admiral, she looked tiny and fragile. Admiral Zarthok, this is Colonel Nancy Green, commander of Earth's defense forces. I'm afraid we can't comply with your demands. Zarthok studied the small human woman with something that might have been amusement. Colonel Green, you command perhaps 100 ships against my 500. Your vessels are smaller than our fighters. How do you expect to resist the combined might of the hegemony? The same way we resisted the Zephyrian Empire, Nancy replied calmly, with superior tactics and better weapons. The alien admiral's laugh was deep and rumbling. Better weapons? Colonel, my fleet carries technology perfected over millennia. We have energy shields that can stop stellar radiation. We have weapons that can crack moons. What could your primitive species possibly have that we have not seen before? Nancy smiled. It was the same expression Jake Morrison had worn when facing Commander Vexthor. Admiral, you're making the same mistake everyone else makes when they look at human weapons, which is, you're only looking at what you can see. Zarthok's expression changed. His intelligence officers had warned him that humans were tricky, but he had dismissed their concerns. Now facing this calm human female, he began to wonder if he had underestimated his enemy. Explain, he demanded. Nancy gestured toward the view screen showing the hegemony fleet. You see 500 impressive warships. You see massive guns and thick armor and powerful shields. You think you're looking at the most dangerous fleet in galactic history. Are we not? No, Admiral. You're looking at targets. Before Zarthok could respond, his sensors began detecting energy signatures throughout the solar system. What his fleet had dismissed as civilian infrastructure was suddenly revealing itself as something very different. Every asteroid mining platform had weapons hidden inside it. Every communication satellite carried antimatter charges. Every space elevator could launch kinetic projectiles at incredible speeds. The humans hadn't built a few defensive positions around Earth. They had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Impossible, Zarthok whispered as his tactical display lit up with thousands of potential threats. No species would weaponize their entire civilization. No alien species, Nancy corrected. But humans learned a long time ago that the best defense is the one your enemy never sees coming. Welcome to the Sol system, Admiral. Every piece of metal you see out there can kill your ships. Captain Velos appeared on Zarthok's private channel. Admiral, we're detecting antimatter signatures from over 3,000 separate sources. They've turned every piece of space debris into a potential bomb. How is this possible? Zarthok demanded. Our intelligence showed minimal defenses. Because you looked for things that looked like weapons. Nancy's voice came through the communication system. Humans don't build things that look dangerous. We build things that are dangerous. The reality of the situation began to sink in for the hegemony fleet. They weren't facing 100 human ships defended by a few space stations. They were facing an entire star system that had been quietly converted into the largest weapons platform ever constructed. Admiral Zarthok had fought against species that built moon-sized battle stations. He had defeated fleets with thousands of ships. But he had never faced an enemy that thought like humans. Other species built their weapons big and obvious, declaring their power for all to see. Humans built their weapons small and hidden, scattered throughout everything they touched. Admiral, Nancy continued, you have two choices. You can withdraw your fleet and we'll pretend this never happened, or you can attack and discover why humans don't need big weapons to win big battles. Zarthok looked at his tactical display. Again. 3,000 antimatter sources, any one of which could destroy a ship. Kinetic launchers that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Energy weapons hidden inside what looked like solar collectors and communication arrays. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Admiral Zarthok realized he was facing an enemy he couldn't defeat. Not because they were stronger, but because they thought in ways he had never encountered. Colonel Green, he said slowly, perhaps we should discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to the situation. Nancy's smile widened. I thought you might see it that way, Admiral. But first, let me show you what happens when humans really want to make a point. One of the mining platforms near Jupiter activated its hidden weapons. A small antimatter charge, no bigger than a baseball, accelerated toward an empty area of space. When it detonated, the explosion lit up half the solar system. That was our smallest charge, Admiral, Nancy said quietly. We have 3,000 more, in sizes ranging from that one up to devices that could sterilize entire planets. Still think your 500 ships are enough? Admiral Zarthok had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. He had never surrendered to anyone. But looking at the tactical display showing the true scope of human defensive capabilities, he realized that some battles couldn't be won through traditional tactics. Colonel Green, he said formally. "The hegemony of worlds requests permission to withdraw from your space and begin negotiations for a formal peace treaty." "Permission granted, Admiral," Nancy replied. "And welcome to the new galactic order, where size doesn't matter nearly as much as creativity." The largest fleet in galactic history began its retreat from Earth, carrying with them the news that would reshape every military doctrine in known space. The age of massive fleets and enormous weapons was ending. The age of human warfare had begun. The explosion at New Haven could be seen from 3 star systems away. Ships across the sector detected the massive energy release and tried to understand what had happened. When the light faded, the Zephyrian invasion fleet was gone. 9 of their dreadnoughts had fled in panic, leaving behind wreckage and confusion. Captain Danny Walsh had been a diplomat before the aliens arrived. Now he found himself as humanity's first ambassador to something called the Galactic Council. The Council was a group of alien species that tried to keep peace between the major empires. Their station orbited a neutron star in neutral space, far from any one empire's control. Danny arrived at the station 3 days after New Haven. The place was buzzing with activity. Aliens from dozens of different species filled the corridors, all talking about the same thing. The humans had done something impossible. They had destroyed Zephyrian dreadnoughts with fighters that looked like toys. The council chamber was a massive room with seats for representatives from 40 different species. Danny took his place at a small desk marked Terra in several alien languages. Around him, creatures of every imaginable shape and size whispered and pointed at the lone human. Council leader Mordak was a tall, thin alien with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Veltar, had been part of the council for over 1,000 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient authority. "We have gathered to discuss the recent incident at New Haven Colony," Mordak announced. "The Zephyrian Empire has suffered significant losses to an unknown human weapon. Ambassador Walsh, please explain what happened." Danny stood up. He had prepared for this moment but still felt nervous facing so many alien species at once. "The Zephyrian Empire invaded one of our colonies without warning. Our people defended themselves using standard military equipment." A ripple of what might have been laughter went through the chamber. Representative Quindar of the Hegemony of Worlds leaned forward. His species looked like giant insects with multiple eyes. "Standard equipment? Ambassador, we have sensor readings from the battle. The energy release was equivalent to a stellar explosion. No standard weapon produces that much power." "I can only tell you what I know," Danny replied carefully. "Our military developed new defensive systems in response to the Zephyrian threat. Those systems worked as designed." Another alien, this one looking like a walking tree with crystals for leaves, spoke up. "The crystalline communion wishes to know if humans possess planet-killing weapons. The energy readings suggest devices that could crack worlds." Danny felt the weight of their attention. These aliens had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew weapons of every type, and now they were afraid of what humans might have built. "We have no interest in destroying planets. We only want to defend our people." Representative Vashati of the Zephyrian Empire finally stood to speak. She was smaller than the commanders Danny had seen in recordings, but her voice carried decades of military experience. "The human speaks lies. No primitive species could develop such weapons. They must have stolen this technology or been given it by an unknown power." "Are you calling humans primitive, Representative Vashati?" Danny asked, calmly. "Of course you are primitive," she hissed. "Your ships are tiny. Your weapons were tiny until this mysterious new device appeared. Your entire civilization spans fewer than 50 star systems. How could such a young species create something that our greatest scientists cannot understand?" Danny smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Maybe that's your problem right there." "What do you mean?" Mordak asked. "You keep talking about big ships and old civilizations," Danny explained. "You measure everything by size and age. But humans learned a long time ago that the biggest weapon isn't always the best weapon. Sometimes the best weapon is the one that fits in your pocket." The chamber fell silent. Danny could see confusion on faces that had dozens of different shapes and colors. These aliens had spent millennia building bigger and bigger weapons, larger and larger ships. The idea that smaller might be better was foreign to them. Dr. Kate Sullivan's research had reached Earth just before Danny left for the council meeting. She had studied intercepted alien communications and discovered something remarkable. The galaxy's major powers had been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. They improved slowly, building on what came before. But humans had started from nothing and built everything new. Representative Vashati is right about one thing, Danny continued. Humans are young compared to your civilizations, but that means we don't think the way you do. We don't assume that big is better. We assume that effective is better. Effective? The insect-like Quindar clicked his mandibles. How is destroying 3 dreadnoughts with one small weapon merely effective? Because it accomplished the mission with minimal resources, Danny explained. Your empire sent 12 massive ships to conquer one small colony. We stopped that invasion with 20 small fighters. Which approach was more effective? The Zephyrian representative's scales turned darker with anger. You speak as if this was some kind of tactical exercise. You destroyed ships carrying thousands of our warriors. Who came to destroy 50,000 of our civilians? Danny shot back. Don't lecture humans about the cost of war when your empire started it. Council leader Mordak raised 2 of his 4 hands for silence. The philosophical debate can continue later. Right now, the council needs to understand the military implications. Ambassador Walsh, can you tell us anything about how these weapons work? Danny had expected this question. Earth scientists had briefed him carefully on what he could and couldn't say. I'm not a scientist, council leader. I can tell you that our weapons use principles that have been known to human physics for over a century. We simply found new ways to apply old knowledge. Old knowledge? The crystal tree alien's voice chimed like bells. What old knowledge allows matter to be converted directly into energy with perfect efficiency? That got Danny's attention. These aliens had sensor readings that told them exactly what the antimatter weapons did. They understood the physics involved, but they had never thought to build such weapons themselves. You know what antimatter is, Danny said. It wasn't a question. Of course we know what antimatter is, Quindar clicked impatiently. It's a theoretical curiosity, impossible to produce in useful quantities, impossible to store safely, impossible to weaponize effectively. Impossible? Danny smiled again. Or just difficult. The silence in the chamber was different now. Danny could see understanding dawning on alien faces. These species had known about antimatter for millennia, but they had dismissed it as impractical because it was hard to work with. Humans had taken on that challenge and solved it. Mordak leaned back in his chair. Ambassador Walsh, are you telling us that humans have mastered antimatter production and storage? I'm telling you that humans don't give up on an idea just because it's difficult, Danny replied. When the Zephyrian Empire threatened our people, our scientists found a way to make the impossible possible. That's what humans do. Representative Vashati stood up again, her voice shaking with anger. This is intolerable. One small species cannot be allowed to possess weapons that threaten the established order. The Zephyrian Empire demands that the Council take action to control human military development. The Council has no authority over human space, Mordak replied carefully. Humanity is not a member of this body. Then perhaps it's time that changed, said a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Representative Zorhan of the Federation of Free Worlds. His species looked almost human except for the blue skin and silver eyes. The Federation was known for staying neutral in most conflicts. What do you mean, Representative Zorhan? Mordak asked. I mean that humans have just demonstrated military capabilities that could reshape the balance of power in this galaxy, Zorhan explained. Such a species should have a voice in galactic affairs. I propose that we invite humanity to join the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported the idea, others feared it. The Zephyrian representative was furious at the thought of giving humans any official recognition. Danny listened to the debate and realized something important. These aliens were scared, not just of human weapons, but of human thinking. They had built their civilizations on the idea that older meant wiser, bigger meant stronger. Humans had just proven that neither assumption was true. The meeting would continue for hours, but Danny already knew the outcome. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not with diplomacy or exploration, but with a demonstration that small weapons in the right hands could defeat any enemy. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison brought the news back to Earth. The governments of all human colonies had met in emergency sessions. Some wanted to evacuate and run deeper into space. Others wanted to surrender immediately. But Admiral Lisa Barnes had made the final decision for Earth's military. Humans would fight. The first target was obvious. New Haven Colony sat on the edge of human space, with 50,000 people living in its cities and farms. General Krixtal led the Zephyrian invasion force toward the planet. His fleet was smaller than the one that had met the Discovery, but still massive by human standards. 12 dreadnoughts, each one bristling with weapons that could level mountains. On New Haven, Colonel Ryan Brooks watched the alien ships appear in the sky through his command center windows. The ships were so large they blocked out the sun over the main city. People in the streets pointed up at them in terror. Some ran for the emergency shelters. Others just stood and stared at the impossible sight. "Sir, they're broadcasting," said Sergeant Lucy Walsh from the communications station. Her hands shook as she worked the controls. "Put it through," Ryan ordered. General Krixtal's image appeared on the main screen. He looked similar to Commander Vexthor, but larger, with more scars across his scaled face. His armor was decorated with symbols that probably meant victory in past battles. "Humans of New Haven," the alien general's voice boomed through speakers across the colony. "I am General Krixtal. Your leaders have chosen to ignore our generous warning. Now you face the consequences of their foolishness." Ryan stepped forward. "General Krixtal, this is Colonel Ryan Brooks, military commander of New Haven. Our people are civilians. Farmers, teachers, engineers. They're not soldiers." Krixtal made that harsh, laughing sound. "Your people should have thought of that before, refusing to leave. You have one final chance. Surrender now and we will allow you to live as slaves. Refuse, and you will all die." Ryan looked around his command center. His staff was young and scared. Most of them had never seen real combat. New Haven's defense force was tiny compared to what was coming down from the sky, but Earth had sent something special for this fight. "I'm afraid I can't do that, General," Ryan said calmly. Krixtal's yellow eyes narrowed. "Then you have chosen death. Watch as your small weapons fail against the might of the Empire." The alien ships began to move into attack formation. Their massive guns turned toward the colony's main city. Energy readings showed power building and weapons that could turn the entire settlement into glass. "Launch fighters," Ryan ordered. From hidden bases around the colony, human fighter craft began to rise into the sky. They were small ships, each one carrying just one pilot. Compared to the alien dreadnoughts, they looked like insects flying toward giants. On the lead alien ship, Krixtal watched the human fighters approach. 20 small craft against 12 dreadnoughts. Are these humans completely insane? His weapons officer, a younger Zephyrian named Tekmar, studied the sensor readings. "General, their fighters are using old technology. Basic fusion engines. Simple armor. Our point defense systems can destroy them all in minutes." Krixtal gestured dismissively. "Do it. Show these primitives what real power looks like." The alien point defense guns opened fire. Beams of energy lanced out toward the human fighters. The first few shots missed as the small human ships twisted and turned through the air with impossible grace. But the aliens had hundreds of guns and the humans only had 20 ships. Dr. Elena Martinez watched the battle from a bunker deep underground. She had spent 5 years developing what the fighters carried. The project had been so secret that even most of Earth's government didn't know about it. Now her life's work was about to be tested against an enemy that thought humans were primitive. "Insects? Come on," she whispered, watching the tactical display. "Show them what human engineering can really do." Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez piloted the lead fighter, call sign Phoenix 1. Around him, Alien weapons fire filled the sky with deadly light. His fighter shook as near misses sent shockwaves through his ship. But Tony had trained for this. He had studied every recording of the alien ships that Jake Morrison had brought back. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Phoenix 1, he said into his radio. "Remember, we only get one shot at this. Make it count." The other 19 pilots acknowledged. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing they probably wouldn't survive. But what they carried in their ships would send a message to every alien empire in the galaxy. Tony's target was the lead dreadnought, the one carrying General Kriegstahl. The massive ship's guns were tracking his fighter now. In seconds, they would have a clear shot. Tony armed his special weapon and prepared for what came next. "Phoenix 1 to New Haven Control," he said. "Package is armed and ready for delivery." "Understood, Phoenix 1, came Ryan's voice. "Godspeed." Tony dove his fighter straight at the alien flagship. Point defense fire erupted around him. His ship's shields flared and died. Warning alarms screamed in his cockpit, but he kept flying toward his target. At the last possible moment, Tony released his weapon and hit the ejection controls. His escape pod blasted away from the fighter just as the ship exploded under alien fire, but the weapon continued on its course. A small package no bigger than a suitcase, flying toward the massive alien ship. On the Dreadnought's bridge, Kriegstahl watched the human fighter die. Pathetic. Their pilot died for nothing. One small bomb cannot even scratch our armor. Tekmar was studying his sensors with a confused expression. "General, I'm reading something strange about that weapon. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It's probably some primitive nuclear device," Kriegstahl said with contempt. "Our shields will absorb it easily." The small weapon struck the Dreadnought's hull and penetrated deep into the ship before exploding. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a tiny star was born inside the alien vessel. The antimatter explosion tore through the Dreadnought. From the inside out, matter and antimatter met and destroyed each other completely, releasing energy that had been locked inside atoms since the beginning of the universe. The massive ship simply vanished in a flash of light brighter than the system's sun. The shockwave from the explosion hit the two nearest dreadnoughts. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, were useless against the fundamental forces of creation and destruction. Both ships broke apart as the wave of pure energy washed over them. In seconds, 3 of the most powerful warships in the Zephyrian fleet had been erased from existence. The remaining 9 ships found themselves facing an enemy they had never encountered before. Humans who had learned to weaponize the very building blocks of reality. Panic filled the alien communication channels. What was that? How did they destroy 3 ships with one small weapon? This is impossible. The surviving fighters pressed their attack. Each one carried the same terrible cargo that had just demonstrated why size meant nothing when your enemy could turn matter itself into a weapon. General Kriegstahl, if he had survived, would have understood something important in those final moments. Humans didn't build big weapons because they didn't need to. They built small weapons that hit harder than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The invasion of New Haven was over before it had really begun, but the real war was just starting. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and looked at the stars ahead. His ship had been exploring this part of space for 3 months now. Earth wanted to know what lay beyond their small corner of the galaxy. Jake had been a military pilot for 15 years before becoming an explorer. He knew how to handle trouble when it came. The ship moved quietly through the dark space near the edge of human territory. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at the weapons station. She was young but skilled with every gun and missile on the ship. Behind her, Commander Pete Davis watched the sensor readings. He had gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many dangerous situations. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on sensors," Pete said. His voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "Large ships coming our way. Really large." Jake walked over to look at the screen. What he saw made his stomach drop. 12 massive ships were heading toward them. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. The largest was easily 10 times the size of the Discovery. "Try to make contact," Jake ordered. "Let them know we come in peace." Amy worked at her station and opened a communication channel. "This is the Earthship Discovery. We are explorers on a peaceful mission. Please respond." The answer came quickly. The main screen lit up with the image of something that looked like a giant lizard standing on two legs. It wore dark armor covered in sharp spikes. Its eyes were yellow and cold. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "I am Commander Vexthor of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender your ship immediately. Your people will leave this space or face destruction." Jake stepped forward. "Commander Vexthor, we had no idea this space belonged to anyone. We're willing to talk about this." Vexthor made a sound that might have been laughter. "Talk? You primitive creatures want to talk? Look at your tiny ship, look at your weak weapons. You are insects trying to speak with gods." The alien commander gestured with one clawed hand. "Show me these weapons you think will protect you." Jake looked at Amy. She understood and brought up the ship's weapon systems on the main screen. The Discovery carried 6 railguns, 4 plasma cannons, and 20 missile tubes. For a human ship, it was well armed. Vexthor and several other aliens on his bridge began making that harsh laughing sound again. "These are your weapons? These tiny toys? Look at what real weapons look like." The screen changed to show the alien ship's arsenal. Massive energy cannons that were bigger than the Discovery's entire hull. Missile launchers that could fire hundreds of warheads at once. Beam weapons that glowed with deadly power. "Each of my ships carries more firepower than your entire planet could produce," Vexthor said. His yellow eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "We have conquered 47 star systems. We have destroyed civilizations that were far more advanced than yours," Pete whispered to Jake. "Captain, their smallest gun is bigger than our main cannon." Vexthor seemed to hear this. "Yes, small human. Your largest weapon would not even scratch our armor. We have fought races that built ships the size of moons. We have faced fleets of thousands. What could you possibly do against the might of the Zephyrian Empire?" Jake felt anger rising in his chest but kept his voice calm. "We may be smaller than you, but humans don't give up easily." "Give up?" Vexthor's laugh was even louder now. "You think this is about giving up? This is about reality. You are children playing with sticks while adults carry swords. Your entire species is nothing more than an amusing distraction." The alien commander leaned forward on his screen. "I will give you one chance because I find your ignorance entertaining. You have one standard cycle to evacuate all human colonies in this sector. After that, we will claim this space for the Empire. Any humans who remain will be destroyed." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked. Vexthor showed rows of sharp teeth in what humans might call a smile. "Then we will demonstrate why 47 civilizations chose death over surrender. Your small weapons and tiny ships will be turned to dust, your planets will burn. Your people will learn what happens when insects try to fight gods." Amy whispered. "Captain, our weapons really can't hurt them. Their shields alone are stronger than our main guns." Jake nodded but kept looking at the alien commander. "We'll need time to discuss this with our government." "One cycle," Vexthor repeated. "After that, any human ship we find in this space will be destroyed on sight. Any human world will be conquered or eliminated. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning." The communication ended. The screen went black. Jake and his crew stood in silence for a moment, looking at the massive alien ships that still surrounded them. "Captain," Pete said quietly, "what do we do now?" Jake thought about Earth and all the human colonies scattered across nearby star systems. He thought about his sister and her kids living on New Haven Colony. He thought about the millions of people who had no idea that an alien empire wanted to destroy them all. "We go home," Jake said finally. "We tell Earth what we found out here, and then we let the politicians and generals figure out what to do about it." Amy turned from her station. "Sir, do you really think we can fight them? Look at the size difference. Look at their weapons." Jake looked at the young lieutenant. She was scared, and she had every right to be. But something in Jake's mind was already working on the problem. Humans had always been smaller than their enemies. They had always faced bigger predators, stronger opponents, more powerful foes. But humans were still here. Amy, I learned something a long time ago in the military, Jake said. Size isn't everything in a fight. Sometimes the small guy wins, because he's faster, smarter, or more determined. Sometimes the small guy wins because he fights dirty. Pete raised an eyebrow. You think we can fight dirty against an empire that's conquered 47 star systems? Jake smiled for the first time since the aliens appeared. Pete, I think we're about to find out just how dirty humans can fight when their backs are against the wall. The Discovery turned toward Earth carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the Zephyrian ships watched and waited, confident that they had just delivered an ultimatum to another primitive species that would soon join. The long list of the conquered or the dead